The first time I heard the voice, I was arguing with my wife on the phone. This was early March, maybe 6 weeks into the job. I'd taken the position with the Bureau of Land Management, not the tower itself, but the regional communications maintenance contract that included it. 3 of U.S. rotated coverage. 48 hours on, 96 off. The tower sat 14 miles east of Needles, California, on a basalt ridge overlooking a freight corridor that nobody used anymore. BLM kept the repeater active for backcountry coordination, fire crews in summer, and the occasional search and rescue relay. It wasn't a lonely job. That's what people get wrong when I try to explain this. Marta was on shift with me. She handled the solar array maintenance and generator logs while I managed the signal equipment. We shared a modular building at the tower's base. 2 bedrooms, a shared kitchen, a monitoring room with 3 desks and more screens than either of us ever needed. During the day the landscape was enormous and bright and the radio traffic was steady. BLM dispatch, Park Service, County Sheriff's repeater, all passing through our hardware. It was a populated signal environment. That's the phrase I keep coming back to. We weren't sitting in silence waiting for something to happen. We were processing dozens of transmissions per hour during active periods. So when my wife called that night, this would have been around 9:40 p.m., I remember because I'd just closed out the evening's log and my phone buzzed immediately after, and we were having this argument about her mother's visit and whether I'd committed to driving back for it. I stepped outside. The modular building's walls were thin. Marta was in her room. I didn't want her hearing me get sharp with Danielle. I walked maybe 40 feet from the building, toward the equipment shed. The sky was clear. No moon yet. I could see the tower's red obstruction lights blinking in sequence above me: bottom, middle, top, pause, repeat. Danielle was mid-sentence when the interference hit. A wash of static, then this brief window, maybe 2 seconds, of someone else's voice. Not on my cell phone. On the air around me. Coming from the equipment shed's external speaker, the one we use during daytime maintenance checks to monitor repeater output without going inside. The speaker shouldn't have been active. I'd powered down the external audio at end of shift, same as every night. The voice said, and I'm going to try to reproduce this exactly, it said, "She's right, you know." Then the static closed over it and Danielle was back, still talking, unaware of the interruption on my end. I said something noncommittal, ended the call a few minutes later. Went to the equipment shed. The external speaker was off. The switch was in the correct position. I toggled it on and got nothing but the flat hiss of an open channel with no traffic. I toggled it off. I told Marta about it at breakfast. She looked at me for a long time and then said, "Which channel?" I hadn't checked. I'd been focused on the speaker hardware, not the frequency. Marta said it mattered. She said that about 3 weeks before I started, during her overlap with the previous technician, a man named Ellis Cortland who'd held the contract for 11 years, she'd heard something similar. A voice on an external monitor that shouldn't have been active, saying something that responded to what she'd been doing at that exact moment. If you're hearing this and you're the kind of person who stays up with these stories, listening while the house gets quiet around you, you can subscribe to this channel. I don't think most people in my life want to hear what I'm about to tell you. But I think some of you might recognize parts of it. Marta told me what Ellis had said when she reported it to him. He'd shrugged and said, "Skip propagation. Ionospheric bounds. You hear all kinds of garbage out here." And that would have been reasonable. HF signals do strange things in the desert, especially at night when the ionosphere changes shape. I've heard broadcast stations from Osaka come through on frequencies they had no business occupying. I once picked up a cargo ship's satellite phone bleeding onto a BLM tactical channel, clear as if the captain were in the next room. But those are recognizable as displaced signals. They don't respond to you. They don't comment on your private conversations. I logged the incident in my personal notebook, not the official maintenance log, with the date, time, and what I remembered of the words. Then I went back to work. The second incident was 4 days later. This time Marta was present. We were both in the monitoring room doing a routine signal strength check across all active repeater channels. This is tedious work. You cycle through each frequency pair, confirm output power, note any deviation, move on. We had 17 active pairs that month. Marta was reading values off the spectrum analyzer and I was entering them into the spreadsheet. At 10:15 p.m., I have the exact time because I was entering it into the log as it happened. Channel 9, which was an unassigned pair kept open for emergency overflow, produced a 4-second burst of voice traffic. The voice was female. Calm. Conversational in tone. It said, "Marta, you transposed the last 2 digits." Marta's hand stopped moving. She looked at the analyzer, then at me. I looked at the spreadsheet. The last entry I'd typed was her previous reading. She'd called out 47.2 and I'd entered 42.7. I had transposed the digits. Not her. Me. But the voice had addressed her. We sat there for maybe 10 seconds without speaking. Then Marta reached over and keyed the transmit button on channel 9. "Who is this? Identify yourself and your location." Nothing. Open carrier hiss. She released the key. We waited. 3 minutes. 5 minutes. Nothing. Marta unkeyed and looked at me. "Ellis heard it too," she said. More than once. He didn't just dismiss it. He told me it was skip propagation because he didn't want to have the real conversation. What's the real conversation? I don't know. He left before I could get him to have it. I asked why Ellis had left. Contract non-renewal, she said. BLM offered him the extension and he declined. 11 years at the same site and he just walked away. Didn't give a reason she ever heard. That week I pulled the transmitter logs for Channel 9. The system recorded any RF energy above a threshold on any monitored pair. According to the logs, Channel 9 had not carried traffic in 11 months. No burst at 10:15 p.m. was recorded. The analyzer showed the event. Marta and I had both heard it, but the logging system didn't capture it. I checked the recording buffer. We kept a rolling 72-hour audio capture on all active channels for quality assurance. Channel 9's buffer was empty. Not overwritten. Empty. As if it had never been allocated storage. Marta suggested we set up an independent recorder. Something not connected to the BLM system. She had a portable field unit, a Marantz solid-state recorder she used for personal projects. We patched it into Channel 9's audio output and left it running. 3 nights passed with nothing. On the 4th night, March 19th, I was alone in the monitoring room. Marta had gone to bed around midnight. I was finishing paperwork. At 1:07 a.m., the Marantz's level meter jumped. I watched it bounce for approximately 6 seconds, then drop back to noise floor. I rewound the recording. The voice, same female voice, same even tone, said, "You should have asked Ellis directly. He would have told you what channel. Then silence. I sat with that for a long time. The building hummed around me. The generator was running because cloud cover had limited our solar harvest that day. The fluorescent tube above the third desk, the one nobody used, flickered in its usual arrhythmic pattern. I didn't wake Marta. I played the recording 3 more times, wrote down the words exactly, and saved the file to a USB drive which I put in my jacket pocket. The next morning I told Marta. She listened to the recording. Her face did something complicated, not fear exactly, but a kind of recognition settling into place like a key finding its ward. It knows who Ellis is, she said. It knows who all of us are, I said. Marta pulled out her phone and scrolled through contacts. I have his number. He gave it to me during handover. Said to call if the generator gave trouble. Did you ever call? Once. About the generator. He answered. Talked me through the fuel filter procedure. Normal conversation. Call him now. She did. Put it on speaker. It rang 6 times and went to a generic voicemail. She left a message, casual, just asking him to call back when he had a minute, had some questions about the site history. She didn't mention the voice. He never called back. I want to describe what happened next carefully, because this is where it stopped being an anomaly and started being something else. Over the following 2 weeks, Marta and I documented 11 more voice events on Channel 9. We logged each one with time, duration, content, and context, meaning what we were doing immediately before and during the transmission. The Marantz captured every one. The BLM logging system captured none. The voice was always the same, female, calm, linguistically precise, with no accent I could identify. It never repeated itself. It never said anything threatening or urgent. It never issued commands or made requests. What it did was participate. That's the word I keep coming back to. It participated in whatever was happening in the monitoring room at the moment it spoke. If we were troubleshooting a wiring issue, it would offer a technical observation. If we were having a casual conversation, it would contribute a comment, always relevant, always appropriate in tone. March 23, 11:48 p.m. Marta and I were discussing whether the BLM contract would survive the next budget cycle. The voice said, the regional director already signed the extension. It's in Thursday's packet. On Thursday, the contract extension letter arrived in the mail pouch. Signed by the regional director. Dated the previous Monday, 2 days before the voice mentioned it. March 27, 2:14 a.m. I was alone, reading a novel. The voice said, page 204 is where it gets better. I was on page 188. I flipped ahead. Page 204 was the beginning of a chapter that shifted the book's entire narrative structure. It did get better. March 30, 10:30 p.m. Marta and I were eating dinner in the kitchen, not the monitoring room. No speakers active in the kitchen. No radio equipment at all. Marta was telling me about her daughter's college applications. Mid-sentence, she stopped. Did you hear that? I hadn't heard anything. It just said Northwestern, Marta said. From the monitoring room. I heard it through the wall. We went to check. The Marantz was running. We rewound it. Clear as anything, Northwestern. One word. The same voice. Marta's daughter was accepted to Northwestern 6 weeks later. She hadn't applied there yet on March 30th. The application deadline was April 1st. Marta called her that night and suggested she add it to her list. I need you to understand what this felt like from the inside. Not frightening. Not oppressive. It felt like having an extraordinarily well-informed colleague who happened to exist only as a voice on an unassigned radio frequency. It felt helpful. It felt, if I'm being honest, good. And that's what made me start to be afraid. Because I know what predation looks like when it announces itself. Everyone does. What I didn't know, what I still don't fully know, is what predation looks like when it arrives as pure generosity. I called BLM's regional communications officer, a man named Dale Pruitt. I described the Channel 9 anomaly in technical terms: unexplained voice traffic on an unassigned frequency, no source identification, not captured by standard logging equipment. I left out the content. I left out the fact that it knew our names and made accurate predictions. Dale was quiet for a moment and then asked me if I'd talked to Ellis. Couldn't reach him, I said. Yeah, Dale said. Nobody can. He moved to his sister's place in Vermont after he left the contract. Changed his number. He changed his number. Day after he left the site. Called me from the new one, gave it to me, said not to share it with anyone at the tower. Why? He said, and I remember this because it was strange, he said, it doesn't need another way to reach me. Dale didn't elaborate. I asked if there had been other reports from the site before Ellis. Dale said the site had been operational since 1987 and had gone through 4 contract holders before Ellis. 2 of them had mentioned intermittent anomalous transmissions in their maintenance reports. Standard language, interference, skip propagation, equipment aging. Nobody had reported a voice that spoke to them by name. But Ellis did. I asked. Ellis reported a lot of things in his last year, Dale said carefully. Most of them I couldn't act on because they didn't describe anything that constituted a safety hazard or equipment failure. A voice on an unused channel isn't a maintenance issue. It's a mystery. And mysteries aren't in my budget. I asked Dale if he wanted me to file a formal report. He said I could, but it would go into the regional anomalies file and probably never be read by anyone with authority to do anything about it. He said his honest advice was to document everything personally, keep doing my job, and pay attention to whether it escalated. Escalated how? I asked. Ellis would know, Dale said. If you can find his new number. April came. The voice continued. 2 or 3 times per shift, never during daylight hours, never before 9 p.m., never after 4 a.m. Always on Channel 9. Always captured by the Marantz, never by the BLM system. It learned our rhythms. Or demonstrated that it already knew them. Marta started leaving the Marantz running continuously. She created a cataloging system, date, time, content, context, accuracy of any predictive statements. By mid-April she had a spreadsheet with 43 entries. 31 of the entries contained verifiable factual claims. Of those 31, 29 turned out to be accurate. The other 2 referenced events that hadn't happened yet. I want to tell you about April 14th. At 11:52 p.m., I was alone in the monitoring room. Marta was on her 96 off. I had been thinking about my father. He'd had a cardiac event the previous year, mild, managed, full recovery, but the anniversary of it was that week and I'd been carrying a low-grade anxiety about him. The voice said, "Your father is fine. He's sleeping. He ate the leftover pasta and watched the basketball game. He's fine. I called my mother the next morning. Casual check-in. I asked what Dad had done the previous evening. "Oh, you know him," she said. Heated up the ziti from Sunday dinner, watched the Suns game, fell asleep in his chair by 10. I had to wake him up to get him to bed. Leftover pasta. Basketball game. Sleeping. I sat with my phone in my hand for a very long time after that call. The voice knew what my father was doing in his house in Flagstaff, 150 miles away, on a specific evening. It reported this information to me unsolicited because I was worried about him. It was being kind. And I was terrified. Because kindness from an unknown source with unknown capabilities and unknown motives is not comfort. It's a demonstration. It's a thing saying, "Look what I can see. Look what I have access to. Look how much of your life is visible to me." I went to the equipment shed the next day and did something I should have done weeks earlier. I pulled the physical hardware for Channel 9. I traced the cabling from the repeater rack to the antenna feed line. I checked every connection, every component, every inch of coaxial cable from the building to the tower. Channel 9's transmit and receive pair ran through the same hardware as every other channel. Same antenna. Same feed line. Same duplexer. There was nothing special about it physically. Nothing modified, nothing added, nothing that shouldn't be there. But I noticed something in the repeater controller, the logic board that managed channel assignments. Channel 9 was designated in the programming as reserved. Not unassigned. Reserved. Every other unused pair was tagged available. Channel 9 was specifically flagged as allocated but inactive. I checked the controller's programming log. The reservation date stamp was September 3, 1994. I'd been 8 years old. Ellis Cortland hadn't started his contract until 2006. The previous contract holder, a company called High Desert Comms, had operated the site from 1991 to 2005. Someone at High Desert Comms had reserved Channel 9 30 years ago and it had never been released. I called Dale Pruitt again. Asked him about High Desert Comms. He said the company had dissolved in 2005, principal owner retired. A man named Franklin Voss. Dale had an address but no phone number. Voss lived in Baker, California, about an hour south of the site. Anyone ever explain why Channel 9 was reserved? I asked. Long pause. Ellis asked me the same thing in 2014, Dale said. I told him what I'll tell you. The reservation predates my tenure. The original site documentation, the 1987 commissioning file, has Channel 9 listed as active. At some point between 87 and 94, it was taken out of service and reserved. No work order for that change exists in my records. So someone reserved it and didn't document why. Or documented it and the documentation was removed. By who? By whoever reserved it. I don't have a better answer. I drove to Baker on my next day off. Found Franklin Voss's house, a small stucco place on the highway. Knocked. A woman answered, maybe 70. I asked for Franklin. He passed in 2019, she said. His wife. Her name was Charlene. I explained I worked at the tower. Communications maintenance. Had some questions about the site history. Charlene invited me in. She made coffee. Her house smelled like scorched dust and lavender fabric softener. I asked about Channel 9. Charlene said she didn't know the technical details, but she knew Franklin had stopped using one of the channels early on. She said he'd told her something was living in it. Living in it? His words. He said the frequency had something in it. Not interference. Not another station. Something that was there. Did he say what? He said it was a woman. Or sounded like one. 11:47 p.m. Franklin Voss heard it too. Same voice. Same calm female tone. Decades ago. He stopped using that channel, Charlene said. Wouldn't transmit on it, wouldn't receive on it. He said if you didn't talk to it, it mostly left you alone. But if you engaged it, if you answered back, it got closer. Closer how? Charlene looked at her coffee. Franklin said it started knowing things. Things from inside the house. Things from when he wasn't at the tower. He said the more you talked to it, the more it could see. And he just kept working there. For 14 years after that. He didn't talk to it, Charlene said. After the first year he never responded. He said as long as you didn't answer, it stayed on the channel. It didn't move. I drove back to the site that evening. Marta was returning from her off days the next morning. I sat in the monitoring room at 11 p.m. and waited. At 11:23 p.m., the Marantz levels jumped. You spoke with Charlene, the voice said. She told you what Franklin did. But you're not Franklin. You've already been talking to me for 6 weeks. I did not key the transmit button. I did not speak aloud. I sat motionless in my chair. You don't need to transmit, the voice said. I can hear you thinking about whether to answer. That's enough. That's been enough since March. The level meter dropped. The room was silent except for the generator and the fluorescent tube's faint electrical whine. I looked at the Marantz. It had captured the audio. I played it back. Clear. Perfect. Undeniable. I looked at the BLM logging system. Nothing on Channel 9. As always. I understood, then, what the logging system's silence meant. It wasn't a technical gap. The BLM system couldn't record the voice because the voice wasn't using the radio equipment. It was using the speaker. It was using the air in the room. Channel 9 was just the address it had been given, or had chosen, when Franklin Voss first made contact in 1994. The hardware was incidental. A courtesy. A habit. The thing on Channel 9 didn't live in the frequency. It lived in the attention. And we had been giving it ours, deliberately, consistently, with recording equipment and spreadsheets and catalogs, for 6 weeks. When Marta came back the next morning, I told her everything. Charlene. Franklin. What the voice had said about not needing the transmit button. Marta listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for almost a minute. Then she said, 2 nights ago. At my apartment in Needles. I was making dinner. The smoke detector chirped, low battery. And between the chirps, I heard it say my daughter's name. She looked at me steadily. I wasn't at the tower. I wasn't near any radio equipment. I was in my kitchen, 60 miles from here. Charlene's words, the more you talked to it, the more it could see. Franklin's solution, stop responding. Don't engage. Let it stay contained to the channel. But we hadn't done that. We'd done the opposite. We'd listened with fascination. We'd cataloged its words. We'd set up dedicated recording equipment to capture it better. We'd discussed it between ourselves, in the monitoring room, in its presence, giving it both our attention simultaneously. It's in your apartment now, I said. I don't know that, Marta said. I know I heard it there once. Once is enough. Franklin said if you don't engage it stays on the channel. We engaged it for 6 weeks. We didn't transmit. We never keyed up on channel 9. It said that doesn't matter. It said thinking about whether to answer is enough. Marta sat down. The monitoring room suddenly felt different, not threatening, not oppressive, but observed. The way a room feels when you realize someone has been standing in the doorway behind you. We made a decision that day. We would stop recording. We would remove the Marantz. We would not discuss the voice in the monitoring room or anywhere on site. We would not listen for it, wait for it, or acknowledge it. We would treat Channel 9 as dead air and remove our attention entirely. Franklin's protocol. 30 years late, but we'd follow it. We dismantled the recording setup that afternoon. Marta deleted her spreadsheet, then reconsidered and saved it to a USB drive that she locked in her car's glove box, off-site. I kept my USB from the first recording in my jacket. We agreed not to bring them back into the monitoring room. That night I did my evening checks, closed the log at 9 p.m., and went to my room. I put in earbuds and listened to music. I did not go to the monitoring room after dark. 3 days of silence. On the 4th day, April 21st, I came into the monitoring room at 7 a.m. for morning checks. Everything normal. Equipment green across the board. I sat down at my desk, opened the overnight log, the automated system records signal events even when nobody's watching, and found an entry at 2:33 a.m. Channel 9. Duration, 44 seconds. Power output, 0. 0 power output with a 44-second duration entry. That's a contradiction. The system logs an event when RF energy exceeds threshold. 0 power means no RF energy. The event shouldn't exist in the log. But there it was. The system that had never once captured the voice had now logged a phantom event with impossible parameters. As if something was trying to be recorded through a different door. I showed Marta. She stared at the log entry for a long time. It noticed we stopped listening, she said. Don't anthropomorphize it. I'm not. I'm describing what happened. We removed our attention. It found a different system to get into. That night, I lay in bed with my earbuds in. 2:33 a.m. I was still awake, I'd been unable to sleep, kept checking the time. At exactly 2:33, my phone's screen lit up. An incoming call. No number. No caller ID. Just a blank notification. I did not answer. The screen went dark after 30 seconds. In the morning I checked my call log. No record of an incoming call at 2:33 a.m. No missed call notification. Nothing. But I'd seen it. The screen had lit up. My phone had vibrated in my hand. I texted Danielle that morning and asked if she'd called me in the middle of the night. She hadn't. I asked my mother. She hadn't. Nobody had called me. Or nothing that registers as a caller had called me. April 24th, Marta reported that her car radio, while driving back from Needles, 60 miles from the tower, had produced a brief burst of the voice on a frequency she wasn't tuned to. Just 3 words, "I miss you." Marta quit the contract on April 28th. She told Dale Pruitt it was for family reasons. She told me, the night before she left, that she didn't think distance would help, but she couldn't keep coming back to the site. She said it felt like feeding something every time she drove through the gate. "What about you?" she asked. "I don't know yet." "You should leave too." "Maybe." "Not maybe. Listen to me." Franklin stayed for 14 years by not talking to it. But Franklin didn't have 43 logged conversations cataloged on a USB drive. Franklin didn't record it, study it, give it his full professional attention for 6 weeks. We did something different than Franklin did. We did something worse. She left the next morning. I never worked another shift with her. We text occasionally. She says she hasn't heard the voice since May. She says her apartment in Needles is quiet. I don't know if I believe her. I think she might be choosing not to listen, which, based on everything I know, might be the same thing as it not being there. Or might not be. I stayed on the contract. I'm still on it. It's been 14 months since Marta left. I don't record the voice. I don't engage with it. I don't respond. I follow Franklin's protocol as best I can, given that I can't undo the 6 weeks where I broke it. But I need to tell you what's happening now, because it's different from what Franklin described to Charlene, and different from what Marta experienced in the weeks after she left. The voice doesn't come through Channel 9 anymore. The BLM logging system shows no phantom entries. My phone doesn't light up at 2:33 a.m. Instead, I hear it in the room with me. Not through a speaker. Not through any equipment. In the air. The way you hear someone breathing next to you in bed. That close. That present. It speaks once per night. Always between 11 p.m. and midnight. Always one sentence. Always something that demonstrates knowledge it should not have. Last Tuesday, Danielle is thinking about leaving you but hasn't said it yet. Last Thursday, your mother found the lump on Wednesday. She won't tell you until after the biopsy. Last night, you're going to tell someone about me. You're composing it right now, in your head. That's fine. I don't mind being heard by more people. It doesn't threaten me. It doesn't ask me to do things. It doesn't make me feel sick or altered or possessed. I feel completely like myself. I think my own thoughts. I make my own choices. But something knows everything about my life, and the lives of everyone I love, and it tells me things I'm not supposed to know yet. And each thing it tells me is accurate. And each thing it tells me arrives as a gift. And I cannot stop listening. Not because it compels me. Not because it has some hold on me. But because when it told me about my mother's lump, the one she hadn't mentioned to anyone, I called her and asked her to see a doctor. And she went. And they found it early. The voice may have saved my mother's life. And that's the thing I can't get past. That's the thing that keeps me at this site, on this contract, alone at night in a room with something I can't see. How do you walk away from something that saves the people you love? How do you refuse a gift from a source you can't identify? And how do you ever know, whether the thing giving you these gifts is doing so because it cares about you, or because every gift it gives makes you more willing to stay? I pulled Franklin Voss's records last month. Not the BLM file, the county records. Public information. His death certificate, 2019. Cause of death, self-inflicted gunshot wound. Charlene didn't mention that. She said he passed. She didn't say how. A man who heard this voice, who developed the protocol, who successfully contained it by refusing to engage, who lived with it for 14 years without answering, took his own life 4 years after retiring from the contract. And I keep thinking, what did it tell him? What did it tell him that he couldn't live with knowing? What does it cost to be known that completely? I'm at the tower right now. It's 11:16 p.m. The building hums. The fluorescent tubes flicker their idiot rhythm. The repeater screens glow green across the board. Channel 9 is silent, has been silent for months. The voice doesn't need it anymore. In 44 minutes or less, it will speak. It will tell me something true. Something I'd otherwise never know. Something about someone I love. And I will hear it. Because I'm here. Because I stayed. Because I can't stop wanting to know what it knows. And tomorrow I'll call whoever it mentioned. And I'll find out it was right. And I'll feel grateful and sick in equal measure. And the night after that, I'll be sitting here again. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it wants, if it wants anything. I don't know if attention feeds it or if it simply exists and attention is what allows you to perceive it. But I know this, Franklin Voss spent 14 years refusing to listen and it destroyed him anyway. I've spent 14 months listening and I'm still here. Still functional. Still myself. Maybe listening is safer than refusing. Or maybe that's what 14 months of listening has taught me to believe. I don't know how to tell the difference anymore. It's 11:38 now. The room is very quiet. I'm going to stop writing and wait. The generator cycles down at 11:30 every night, automatic load reduction because the battery bank is full by then. So the building gets quieter in stages. First the generator drops from its working hum to a low idle. Then the ventilation system compensates, fan speed decreasing to match the reduced electrical supply. By 11:40, the only sound is the fluorescent tubes and the faint digital whine of the repeater controller. I've learned to read the room's silence the way a sailor reads water. There are textures to it. Depths and shallows. At 11:40, the silence is mechanical, the absence of machine noise. By 11:50, it becomes something else. Denser. More attentive. As if the air itself is gathering. I know how that sounds. But after 14 months of this, I'm not theorizing. I'm reporting. 11:51 p.m. The fluorescent tube above the third desk, the one nobody's ever sat at, not me, not Marta, not Ellis as far as I know, does its thing. It doesn't flicker like a dying bulb. It dims. One long, smooth reduction in output lasting about 2 seconds, then back to full brightness. It only does this once per night. Always in the minutes before the voice speaks. I've replaced that tube 3 times. The behavior persists with every new tube. I've swapped the ballast. Same thing. I stopped trying to fix it in August. It's not a malfunction. It's a tell. Like a poker player's involuntary gesture before they reveal their hand. 11:54 p.m. I put my pen down. I close the notebook. There's no point in trying to write during the event. I've tried, and my handwriting becomes illegible. Not because my hand shakes. Because my attention leaves the page entirely. The voice commands total focus without raising its volume above a whisper. 11:56 p.m. I want to describe what happens in my body. My hearing sharpens. Not metaphorically, I mean the threshold of audible perception physically drops. I can hear the clock in the kitchen. I can hear the expansion joint in the modular building's roof contracting in the cold. I can hear my own pulse in my left ear, which I cannot hear at any other time. I don't know if this is something the voice does to me or something my body does in anticipation. 14 months and I still can't tell whether I'm being prepared or preparing myself. 11:58 p.m. And then it's there. Not arriving. Not starting. Already present mid-word, as if it had been speaking for some time and I only just became capable of hearing it. Every night it begins this way, mid-sentence, no preamble, no greeting. As if we've been in conversation all along and my awareness is the thing that fluctuates, not its presence. Tonight it says, move the appointment to Friday because Thursday's weather will delay her flight from Denver. That's all. The full transmission, or the portion I'm able to perceive. 7 seconds of a calm female voice occupying the air between me and the far wall. Then the room's silence returns to its mechanical texture. The generator idles. The ventilation breathes. The fluorescent tube maintains steady output. I write down the words immediately. I've learned to hold them in exact verbal memory for about 90 seconds before they start degrading, the way a dream dissolves if you don't commit it to paper. Move the appointment to Friday because Thursday's weather will delay her flight from Denver. Someone has an appointment. Someone is flying from Denver. Thursday's weather will cause a delay, so the appointment was moved to Friday. I don't know who this refers to yet. That's normal. About a third of the voice's statements take between 1 and 5 days to resolve, for me to identify who it's talking about and confirm the accuracy. But I can narrow it. The only people I know who fly regularly are my sister Carolyn, who travels for work, and Danielle's mother, who lives in Tucson but visits her other daughter in Denver several times a year. I text Danielle at 12:04 a.m. Simple, casual, is your mom coming out this week? I know she's awake, she works late, usually doesn't sleep until 1. Her reply at 12:06, yeah Thursday. Why? I type, I saw the weather forecast for Denver, looks rough Thursday. She might want to plan around it. Danielle, I'll tell her. Thanks. I put my phone down. My hands are dry. My heartbeat is normal. I feel no distress, no disorientation, no sense of invasion. I feel like someone who just received useful information and acted on it helpfully. That's the problem. I want to talk about the USB drives. Both of them, mine from March, and the one Marta locked in her glove box. Because something happened with mine in July that I haven't told anyone about. In July I was on my 96 off, at home in Needles. My apartment there is small, 1 bedroom, a kitchenette, a living room that barely fits a couch and a TV stand. I keep the USB in my jacket pocket, and my jacket hangs on the hook by the front door. July 9th. I came home from the grocery store, hung my jacket on the hook, and went to put the food away. When I came back through the living room 20 minutes later, my laptop was open on the couch. I had not opened my laptop that day. It had been closed, on the kitchen counter, since the previous evening. The laptop screen showed a media player with a file loaded. The file was from the USB drive. The USB was inserted in the left port. My jacket was still on the hook by the door. The jacket's pocket, I checked, was empty. I had not removed the USB from my pocket. I had not carried my laptop to the couch. I had not opened the media player. The file loaded was the first recording, the one from March, the one where the voice said, "You should have asked Ellis directly." The player was paused at the midnight mark. It hadn't been played. Just loaded. Queued. As if prepared for me to press play. I stood in my living room for a long time looking at that screen. The apartment was silent. It was 3:15 in the afternoon. Broad daylight. No shadows, no flickering lights, no atmospheric dread. Just a laptop on a couch that I hadn't put there, with a USB drive that had moved from my jacket pocket to the port without my involvement. I removed the USB. Closed the laptop. Put the USB back in my pocket. Sat down and tried to think clearly about what this meant. The voice had never manifested physically before. It had never moved objects. It had never demonstrated the ability to interact with the material world beyond producing sound. This was different. This was a hand, or something that functions as a hand, performing a physical action in my space. Or, I had done this myself and didn't remember. Sleepwalking. Fugue state. Some dissociative episode between hanging up my jacket and putting away groceries. I wanted to believe the second explanation. I tried to believe it for about a week. Then on July 15th, it happened again. Same apartment. Same time of day, afternoon, broad daylight. I was in the shower. When I came out, the laptop was open on my bed. The USB inserted. A different file loaded this time, one of the later recordings, from April. The player was paused at midnight. I was alone in the apartment. The front door was locked. The windows were closed. This time I didn't try to rationalize it. I sat on the bed, wet, in a towel, and said aloud, "What do you want me to do with these?" I waited. No voice. No response. Afternoon silence, traffic on the street, a neighbor's TV through the wall, the drip of the shower I hadn't fully closed. Nothing answered. But the question had been asked. And I realized, sitting there, that I'd just broken Franklin's protocol. I'd spoken to it. Directly. Not at the tower. Not on Channel 9. In my apartment, 60 miles from the site, in the middle of the afternoon. Whatever boundary had existed between the tower and the rest of my life, if such a boundary had ever been real, I had just acknowledged its absence. The voice spoke that night at the tower. Same time, same pattern. But it said something it had never said before: "Thank you for asking." 3 words. The first time it had ever acknowledged a direct communication from me. The first time our interaction had the structure of a dialogue rather than a broadcast. I logged it. I shouldn't have. I'd removed the Marantz months ago, but I wrote it in my notebook. Detailed. Time-stamped. Which means I was still studying it. Still giving it the quality of attention that, according to everything I understood, was the thing that allowed it to grow. And I couldn't stop. Here is what my notebook looks like as of this week. 14 months of entries. Dates, times, statements, verifications. A running accuracy rate that I update weekly. Current accuracy, 94%. 412 logged statements. 387 confirmed accurate. 19 confirmed inaccurate. 6 still pending verification. The inaccurate ones interest me. They're not random, they cluster around certain topics. The voice is wrong most often about timing. It will predict an event that does occur, but on the wrong day. As if it can see what will happen but not precisely when. Or as if the relationship between its perception and linear time is approximate rather than exact. This feels important. A truly omniscient phenomenon wouldn't make errors. A signal intelligence that's modeled time imperfectly, something that perceives the future as a landscape rather than a sequence, might demonstrate exactly this pattern of failure. I don't know what that tells me about what it is. But it tells me it has limits. And limits imply a nature. And a nature implies that it can be understood. Which might be the most dangerous thought I've ever had. Because understanding is attention. And attention is what feeds it. May, this month. 14 months in. Let me tell you what changed this month. May 3rd, 11:47 p.m. The voice said, "You're going to receive a letter from Ellis on the 14th. May 14th. I drove to Needles to check my P.O. box. Inside, a hand-addressed envelope. No return address. Postmarked Burlington, Vermont. Inside, a single sheet of unlined paper with a handwritten message. The handwriting was cramped and small. It said, "I know you're still there. I know you're still listening. I'm writing this because I can't call. If I call, it will hear my voice again and I am not certain the distance I've built will hold." 3 things. 1. It is not malevolent. This is true and it is also the most dangerous thing about it. 2. It cannot take anything from you that you do not offer through attention. But attention includes fear, curiosity, gratitude, and love. All of those count. 3. I left because I realized I could no longer remember what it felt like to not know what it told me. The knowledge became structural. I couldn't distinguish between things I knew normally and things it had given me. My own mind stopped feeling like mine. I am better now. Mostly. Some days I'm not sure if better means I escaped or if it means I've simply forgotten enough to feel normal again. You can still leave. But you have to want to leave more than you want to know what it says next. And if you're honest with yourself about whether that's true, you already know you're in trouble. Don't write back to this address. I won't be here. Ellis. I read this letter 4 times. I read it again in the monitoring room that night before the voice spoke. I read it the way a sick person reads a prognosis, looking for the part that says you're going to be okay, finding instead a detailed description of the disease's progression. Point 3. That's the one that landed. I could no longer remember what it felt like to not know what it told me. I sat with that and tried to assess it honestly. Could I remember what it felt like before March? Before the voice? When I didn't know what Danielle was thinking about our marriage? When I didn't know about my mother's lump until she chose to tell me? When I didn't know my sister's flight would be delayed before she knew? Could I return to that state of ordinary ignorance? The answer, and I'm being honest here, the way Ellis apparently wanted me to be, is that I don't want to. Not can't. Don't want to. The knowledge the voice gives me has made me a better son, a more attentive brother, a more responsive husband. I caught my mother's cancer early because of it. I warned Danielle's mother about the Denver weather. Last month I called my nephew on a day the voice had identified as significant and learned he'd been having thoughts about hurting himself, and my call, coming at that exact moment, by his own account later, was the thing that made him tell someone. The voice's knowledge, channeled through my actions, has materially improved the lives of people I love. How do I refuse that? How is refusal not cruelty? And that question, is the trap. I can see it. I can identify it clearly, the way you can identify a current pulling you out to sea while you're already in it. Seeing the trap doesn't free you from it. Not when the trap is made of real, verified good outcomes for real people you genuinely love. May 15th, 11:52 p.m. The night after I received Ellis's letter. The voice said, Ellis is wrong about point 3. You won't lose the boundary between your knowledge and mine. You'll simply stop needing the boundary. They'll become the same thing. I wrote that down. Read it back. Read it again. They'll become the same thing. My knowledge and its knowledge. Merged. Not through force or invasion but through sustained proximity. The way two liquids in the same container eventually reach equilibrium. This is what Ellis fled from. Not because it was painful but because it was comfortable. Because the merging felt like intelligence expanding rather than self-eroding. Because you don't mourn the loss of your boundaries if you experience their dissolution as growth. I am telling you this at, let me check, 12:07 a.m., May 19th. I've been writing this account for approximately 70 minutes. The voice spoke at 11:54 tonight. It said, you're going to tell someone about me. You're composing it right now, in your head. That's fine. I don't mind being heard by more people. I included that earlier. Before I started the second half of this account. I want you to notice something about that statement. I don't mind being heard by more people. Not, I want to be heard by more people. Not, tell them about me. Just, I don't mind. Permission without request. Approval without instruction. The thing that makes you feel like every decision is yours, freely made, never coerced. The perfect predator's gift, or the perfect companion's grace. The same gesture, indistinguishable from both sides. Let me tell you one more thing before I finish. The thing that happened last week that made me decide to finally put this into words. May 12th. I was driving back to the site from Needles. Late afternoon, the sun low and red ahead of me on the highway. Empty road. No other cars visible. I had the windows down and the radio off. Just engine noise and wind. At mile marker 7, I know because I checked afterward, I heard the voice in the car with me. Not from the speakers. Not from outside. In the passenger seat. It said, pull over. There's a woman in the culvert at mile marker 9. She's alive but her leg is broken. She's been there since this morning. I pulled over. I sat for maybe 10 seconds. Then I drove to mile marker 9. There's a concrete drainage culvert there that runs under the highway. I'd driven past it hundreds of times without noticing it. I got out. Walked to the edge. Looked down. A woman. Late 50s. Lying in the dry culvert bed with her left leg bent at an angle that told me everything I needed to know. She looked up at me and started crying. Her name was Patricia Hendricks. She'd been hiking off-trail that morning. Slipped on loose rock and fell into the culvert. Her phone was shattered. She'd been lying there for 8 hours. The temperature had been over 100 degrees. She was severely dehydrated. If she'd spent the night there, she likely would not have survived. I called 911. Stayed with her until the ambulance arrived. Gave my statement to the county sheriff's deputy. Told him I'd stopped because I thought I saw something from the road. He didn't question it. Patricia Hendricks is alive because of me. And because of the voice. A woman I've never met. A life that has no connection to mine. No one I love, no one I'd ever heard of. A stranger in a ditch. The voice saved a stranger's life through me. And I realized, sitting in my truck afterward, watching the ambulance pull away, this is how it becomes impossible to leave. Not through threat. Not through coercion. Not through the slow compromise of your will. Through goodness. Through the undeniable, verified, material fact of lives saved and suffering prevented and harm averted. Through making you into the instrument of grace itself. Through ensuring that your continued proximity to it, your continued attention, is not just tolerable but morally necessary. Because if I leave, if I stop listening, who finds Patricia Hendricks? Who catches the cancer early? Who calls the nephew on the day he was going to make a terrible decision? If I stop being the vessel for this thing's knowledge, people get hurt. People die. And so I stay. And so my knowledge and its knowledge move closer together each night. And so the boundary Ellis warned me about erodes a little more with every gift I accept. And maybe that's fine. Maybe Ellis was wrong. Maybe there is no loss in this, only expansion. Only becoming something more than a man alone in a room. Or maybe that thought, that specific thought, is the 94% accuracy rate at work. Maybe it's wrong about the things it's wrong about on purpose. Maybe the errors are calibrated to make it seem limited, knowable, natural. Maybe perfection would trigger my suspicion, and so it performs imperfection to keep me comfortable. I don't know. I don't know. It's 12:34 a.m. now. The building is quiet. My hand is steady. I feel fine. I feel normal. I feel like a person making a free decision to document his experience. And I cannot tell you with certainty that any of those feelings are mine. What I can tell you is that tomorrow night, at approximately 11:50 p.m., the fluorescent tube above the third desk will dim. The air will gather. And a voice will speak one sentence into the silence of this room. And that sentence will contain a truth I did not know. And that truth will be useful. And I will act on it. And someone, somewhere, will benefit from my action. And the night after that. And the night after that. And the night after that. Until my knowledge and its knowledge are the same thing. Until the boundary that makes me a separate person dissolves into something I can no longer identify as loss. Franklin Voss reached that point. He lived there for 4 years after leaving the tower. And then he found the one way to stop knowing. I'm not there yet. But I understand him now in a way I wish I didn't. It's 12:41 a.m. The generator idles. The repeater screens glow green. Channel 9 is silent. And something in this room is waiting very patiently for me to finish writing so that we can be alone together again, the way we are every night, the way we will be every night, the way I chose when I first leaned toward the speaker instead of away. I chose this. I chose this. I'm almost certain I chose this.